can be a bad omen for a nation when it turns away from God. And this will be the third one in 7 years, okay? And if you look at the map and look at how these blue solar eclipses crosses America, they form a giant A. Okay? A is the first letter of the alphabet. Who is Alpha? Jesus is Alpha and Omega, right? Is that a coincidence? But if you look where they cross, this solar eclipse is going to enter this country at Eagle Pass, Texas, which is considered ground zero for the border invasion. It's going to cross over one of those passes at a place near a giant statue of the cross in a garden that proclaims the second coming of Jesus Christ. 77-foot, 7-inch tall cross. Okay? As it continues on, it's going to cross the first path, which was in 2017, over the New Madrid Fault. It's almost as if God is saying, either turn back to Jesus Christ, or you will suffer the consequences. And there have been solar eclipses that have crossed this country back in the early 1800s, and there was like over 1,000 earthquakes after that. Okay? So I believe that our time is running out. You know, most of you know what happened on Easter. And these kinds of things, God's not going to tolerate our behavior much longer. If God exists, and I believe He does, He is not going to tolerate this nation allowing all these abominations to take place in this country. So, if you decide to vote for me, I will be taking the message of revival to the Washington, D.C. Now, if you want me to talk about politics, if you really want to know where I stand on things, you can buy my book. Okay? I'm not asking you for a donation, but I will sell you a book. And my $7 that I get off that book will not compare to a $10 million PAC contribution. But you can look in that book. That book's broken down into 3 sections. The first section is on why we need revival. Okay? Second section is based on government and all the problems we have in our government. The national debt, these things. There's 51 of those. And then I'll address 51 problems with our economy. And that's government spending, overspending, sending money overseas to over 150 countries. It's just one thing after another. The first time I ran, I wrote a book. And in the book, I said the government has a process that I call crisis planning. They wait till they have a crisis, and then they start planning. Okay? We need somebody with a vision for the future. So that's why I'm running, and now I'll just go to the questions.
Do you have your books here?
I do, in the trunk. I have signs too.
What do you think of Trump and the border?
And the border?
And the border.
Well, I think Trump's obviously the best candidate. I have some issues with President Trump. Yes. And, you know, as a senator, I will gladly stand right beside him when he has a good idea and wants to do good things for this country. But at some point, somebody has to kind of stand in front of him and say, whoa, you know, you can't be doing that. That's not right. So I'm not a 100% Trump supporter, but I will do what's best for the people of West Virginia without a doubt. Okay. Now the border, you know, the number one thing we got to do with the border is get rid of all the incentives for people to come illegally. I mean, you can put up the highest fence you want, but if you're giving away free stuff for the people that climb it, they're going to continue to come, right? So we got to get rid of the incentives. All the free stuff's got to go. If you're here illegal, you're here illegal, okay? So get rid of the incentives, close the border, and defend the border. We have an invasion of enemy combatants coming into this country that wants to harm us. We've got an invasion of diseases coming into this country. We've got an invasion of drugs, fentanyl and all these things. And we've got to stop all of that. And so we've got to have a strong policy, but you got to get rid of the free stuff first. Anybody else?
When did you, go ahead.
Good.
When did you run the first time?
2006.
2006.
You know, it was Senator Byrd was still on the ticket. And that was an interesting experience for somebody that's never been in politics. I got to say, quite a few times that you're no Robert Byrd, you know.
All I can say is thank God.
But, and I've learned a lot about campaigning then too. You know, I had there were 6 candidates running, and one of them wanted to drop out and endorse me. And instead of saying yes, because that would have definitely helped my campaign, I said, no, you have a good purpose for what you were running for, because he was pro-life. And so I turned him down. If that was to happen today, I would gladly accept it. But you learn things over the years. The interesting thing is, you can't depend on the media. In May of 2023, I filed the paperwork to run for this office. And when God told me to run for this office back in December of 2022, I waited until May to file the papers, but you still don't even hear my name in the paper. You know, there's only 2 candidates running according to the mainstream media, right? I mean, my name's never been mentioned, but, you know, it was on the FEC website because I got all kinds of calls from everybody, you know, wanting me to sign them up to run my campaign. So my name was out there. I did my first radio interview in June of last year. So, you know, my name has been there. They just ignore me, like they ignore anybody they don't want.
Yeah, I was thinking about the invasion, the 10+ million people who are already here. Trump has promised to deport them all. How would you see that being done? Do you think that's feasible? And what would be the reaction to all of that as you would see it?
Well, you know, if you're going to try to deport 10 million people, you're going to have to get out your wallet, which is our money, not the government's. And you're going to have to pay a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of process. The best way to do it is say no free stuff anymore. If you got health care, you're going to lose it unless you're a citizen. You're going to lose all your benefits. If you're in college and you're not a citizen, out you go. They will leave if they're not getting everything free. And you've got to leave before you can apply to become a legal citizen. So the cheapest way to do it is just say no more free stuff.
Eisenhower got rid of 1.3, 1.4 million illegals without too much effort when he was president.
There's a lot more free stuff now. That's the biggest problem. Just a lot more free stuff. And, you know, these cities are giving these people money. They're giving them all kinds of benefits to be here.
Turning them loose when they commit crimes.
Turn them loose when they commit crimes. And that's got to stop. That's got to stop. You got to get tough on that guy.
The amounts that I saw on TV today, the amounts that Los Angeles and Chicago, New York, Denver, several of the big cities, and it's just phenomenal the amount of money they spend on them already, and what they're going to spend on health care and stuff. It's just unbelievable.
Well, it will eventually bankrupt those cities. You know, a lot of your cities have issues with pension plans and things like that already, underfunded. And they're just creating a problem that, they're not gonna be able to do themselves. The federal government cannot continue to bail everybody out.
California has a $67 billion deficit at the start of the year, and their legislature keeps giving them more freebies. It's just amazing. I mean, they can't sell that much wine in California to support all of it.
Well, and they have so many issues in California anyway, you know, the water rights, for example, between the cities and the farmers is a big issue out there in that beautiful land. They've got a lot of problems. You know, the big issue we have to deal with in this country is that we are being invaded and we are going to war. I mean, we may not want it, but we're going to war. China wants it, Russia wants it, North Korea wants it, Iran wants it, and probably a lot of people in this country want war. And we're doing nothing at all to prepare for that. You know, we've got 2 Navy ships blocked in the Baltimore Harbor that cannot come out because of this accident that happened. You know, we're just so unprepared for things. And so I would encourage you to prepare yourself as best as you can for that. But, you know, it's just, when they appropriated, I think it was $93 or $95 billion for Ukraine and Israel and somebody else, I said, of course, I would not have voted for that, but I said we should have used that money to build mass casualty urgent care centers in this country. Because our hospitals were in terrible shape in COVID first year. Well, what's going to happen when you have a nuclear attack on New York City or Washington, D.C., or another pandemic released? We need to be prepared for that. And we could have used that money and built facilities within every state, so when those things happen, we have the medical facilities that we need for them.
But the woke policy puts the Secretary of Defense in there that he can go to the hospital and be put down for sleep for a while his associate or assistant that should step into his shoes is on vacation in the Caribbean, and they think that's fine. And there would be nobody to stop or push the counter button to shoot down a missile coming in.
Well, you know, it's just totally unacceptable for that to happen.
Nothing's happened.
Well, no, nothing's going to happen. I mean,
Chief,
that's
you
one of the
think
biggest
that's a
things you see is that corruption like that and unlawful activities never get punished.
The other, if I know Justice Mooney and you are running for senator, who are the other?
Well,
Three others?
there's a gentleman, Byron Berg, he's from Beckley, he's a pastor. His philosophy is a lot like mine, but I don't know that he's doing anything at all.
You'd have to have any money on this, his campaign finance.
Don Lindsay,
I don't know anything about Don Lindsay.
Brian McKinney.
Now, Brian McKinney, I've met several times. He seems like a real nice guy. Got
Sounds
six
like a
kids.
dozen of Doug's.
I called Brian to see if we were related. He grew up in State College, Pennsylvania, and he's a Penn State graduate. And he's, his career has been with machines for lining football fields, parking lots and stuff like that. But he told me the comment he gets most when he goes around to speak to Republican groups is, I'm glad you're running, because I'm glad we got somebody we can vote for, because they're not favorable toward the 2 leading candidates.
Well, you know, the second candidate, Congressman Mooney, is being investigated for an ethics violation.
2 times.
Yeah, and that's not complete yet. So if he were to happen to be the nominee, you know, that I would think the Democrats would come out of the woodwork to bring that, you know, to the forefront, and it would probably hurt the Republican nominee. Because, I mean, let's face it, whoever wins the Republican nomination is most likely going to win in the fall. Unless it's Congressman Mooney.
What about Jeff McNulty?
Yeah.
I'm just going through the list here.
I watched an interview of her. I mean, she's,
Yeah.
seems like a nice lady.
Seems a little young.
You know, we all have conservative values, and I think we're all, would have our advantages and disadvantages. I don't know, in the interview that she talked about, she didn't really relay that she had any experience in anything. You know, I've been in healthcare for almost 40 years, And so I understand our healthcare system much greater than anybody I'm running against. I've been chairman of the building commission there in the city of Princeton. And so I've run committees, I understand, the real estate value and this kind of thing, and I love to manage money. I have three companies, 3 businesses, and 2 locations. And we do about $2 million a year, and I pay every bill. Because if you don't watch where you spend your money, you get into trouble. So I'm an accountant, of course, she watches over me, but I pay every bill, every one. And I've done that for years. I do my own taxes. I've taught my kids to do your own taxes. You know, my daughter runs a business, my wife runs a business. So when it comes to business experience, if you want somebody that's gonna save you money, I am your candidate. You can't elect somebody that's gonna spend $10 million to get elected and expect him to save you money. They're used to spending money. So you
Other
gotta
people-
find somebody that's responsible.
So I wanted you to explain to us what special kind of armor you have to take to Washington DC so that you don't get killed by all the rhinos. I'm serious.
Good question.
Well, I have a friend that builds, manufactures, he owns multiple companies worldwide that makes all your vests for police officers and military. And he makes them just for military and policemen. He won't sell it to the public, but I'm hoping that he will give you one.
And your personal, your individual armor is what I'm talking about. What kind of, I didn't
Well,
mean that
Yeah,
literally,
my,
but figuratively, how are you gonna stand up to these people?
well, first of all, my faith is in the Lord, okay? And the Lord would not send me there if he didn't have a purpose for me. You know, this has been my destiny. I feel like when God first called me in 2004, it was a dream. And I sat up in bed and said, "You have got to be kidding." Because he said, "I want you to go to the United States Senate." And I said, "You have got to be kidding." Politics was the furthest thing from my mind. I was trying to build a real estate empire, and I was just out looking for properties. You know, I was just, that's what I wanted to do between my practice and doing that. And I said, "You have got to be kidding." And, you know, so I resisted for the longest time. And I said, "I don't want to do this. You got the wrong guy here. You know, I'm not a politician. I'm not tall, I'm not articulate. You know, I don't have any of the traits that you think of a politician." And so, you know, faith in the Lord, that's all I can tell you. But I will tell you this, it's better to have one voice in Washington than it is no voices,
None, that's right.
okay? And if I'm there, you will have a voice, okay? You may not always agree with me, but you will have a voice.
Evidently, the pressure is, everybody succumbs to it one way or another. Money is the kind of pressure it is. And isolation if you don't fall in.
I'm sure it will be really rough, I don't doubt that whatsoever. But I'm not going for the money. And I'm a one term too. I mean, it's a 6-year term. I am not running for reelection. You can write that down, cast it on the stone, because I am not running for reelection. If I can't do what I feel like God is sending me there to do in 6 years, I want out of that system.
Good point.
Yes.
Well, you were talking about the casualties in the hospitals and stuff. What's your thought about what appears to be the goals in all the medical schools in this country now? They're more concerned with teaching the residents about DEI than they are about teaching them to take care of sick people. What do you
Well,
think the government's role in that is?
Well, the government has too big a role in it.
Yes.
Absolutely, I see it every day, okay? Your big pharmaceutical companies have way too much influence in medical schools, okay? So that's gotta stop. Your big insurance companies, you know, when I prescribe a glaucoma medication for a patient that costs $30 a bottle, and the company the insurance company says, that's not on our list, you have to prescribe this one, which is $300. Something's going on. What is it? Something's going on here. You won't do a $30 bottle, but you will do a $300 bottle. Who's getting some kickback?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the thing. The government has way too much influence on that kind of stuff. And I get that too. And we got something from Medicare that, you know, we had to do this DEI training. And we didn't have to sign anything. It was just a suggestion. But I talked to one of the doctors and I said, if I have to do this, we won't be taking Medicare. We will not do it.
What is DEI? What's it?
It's all this diversified, you know. you've got-
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Diversity, inclusion, and equity.
You can't say he and she and this kind of stuff.
Oh, you have to say it.
They, them,
Whatever their
No,
pronouns.
I say it.
he, him, she, her.
I've got a T-shirt that I bought from Patriot Depot, and it says, my pronouns are investigate Fauci.
Anybody else?
What other questions do we have for Zane?
Safe travel.
Thank you.
All right, sir, thank you very
Can
much.
we purchase a
Doing
book?
better.
Okay,
The books are $15.
I know I would like one. Is there anybody else that would like a book? Anybody? Okay.
Sir, did you bring them?
Yeah, I have a few.
Okay, well, we'll have those at the end of the meeting for you. So let's appreciate Zane one more time for coming over here. All righty, so we are about 6 weeks away from the primary, which is why Zane came out and joined us this evening. But we also have a number of other candidates that are here tonight, and I think it's fair to give them a few minutes and talk a little bit about their campaign, where things are at, what they're about, and when we can expect to see them again and what it's like. So we'll start with Doug Beard, who's running for sheriff.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Try to speak loudly. Dr. McKinney says I don't talk loud enough.
Yes.
Try to pick it up a little bit. I was interviewed a few days ago by the gentleman for the Real West Virginia publication. And his first question was, why do you want to do this? You know, why do you want to throw yourself, of course, this is my 7th election. I've been elected 5 times as magistrate. Retired a year early to run for sheriff, came up a little short, so son's on his way out to here I am. But the 19 years being in the magistrate court, I was on the outside of the sheriff's office looking back in as much as I could, as far as what the deputies were doing, what they weren't doing, how things were being done, where I saw things coming up short. Some of the things I observed were handling of prisoners. I've got a corrections background with 6 years in corrections. I'm trained to care, custody, and control of inmates in prison. And to see someone escorting an inmate handcuffed even in the front with a sidearm right beside him. I mean, that's just not something you should do. You should be on the other side. Well, if you have to be on that side, when I had to be on that side, I was always a step back and a step over. So if they ever turn, all you gotta do is get the interview stamps and take care of business. So, and they would leave inmates unattended at times. Set them in a chair, don't do anything, and then go in the other room and start talking and eating candy and doing stuff. And that's just one of the small things. You just don't do that. Because anything can happen. You're responsible for that inmate while they're there. Numerous things can happen that aren't good. Service of process. I've talked about this before, serving papers. You know, I've had landlord-tenant issues where they come in, they file their suit, they pay their fee. It's scheduled within 10 days, trying to get a tenant out to start paying or destroying the property. They come back for the hearing, we don't have a return. We've got to have a return to show that the paper was served. We call over, sometimes they don't know where the paper is. I've had a few times where it was returned, not found. And this landlord would say, well, I know they're there, I see him, I saw him the other day. So they turn around in and hire a private process server, pay them again, because they don't get a refund on what they paid the sheriff's office. Pay them, and within a day or two, it's served. Then you can proceed. So there's areas that I think they're losing focus on that are some primary duties of the sheriff's office. As I said before, the sheriff's office is a little different than the other law enforcement agencies in that they bailiff court, transport and handle prisoners, do mental hygiene, where they pick the patients up, transport them to facilities all over the state, and they serve the process before they start patrolling the roads and making arrests and all this other law enforcement stuff that state police, city officers, and all those do. So I think they're losing focus at times on what they need to be doing primarily before they start branching out and doing SWAT team and all this fancy stuff that spends a lot of money doing that may or may not be the best way to spend our tax dollars. There's a time and place for some of that. They spend a lot of money in their training, and when they have their training, I talked to one of the deputies and they said when they do training, all those people go do that and there's one person out in the whole county. Well, that's the way it was when I was hired in 1992. I may be the only one out for the whole county. But that wasn't because everyone's at training, that's just because there wasn't anybody else to do it. But now, to see that happen, it's just not acceptable, in my opinion. I mean, you've got close to 30 deputies, and you should have good coverage every day. You know, there are vacations and time off and sick leave and these things too, but you've got that many people, I think they can utilize and schedule a little better and not put all the eggs in one basket when training comes. And I'm not sure how often they train, but it's pretty regular. And if you're going to have a unit like that, you need to train. But you've got state police has a SWAT team. They can be here in a short period of time. There's only a handful of incidents really that you need a SWAT team. You know, if the worst case scenario, you have an active shooter, as you hear from time to time, goodness forbid we ever have that. But if they do, you don't wait for a SWAT team to come in and organize and get all their stuff on, everyone huddle up, we're going to do this. Because time is lives. When you have an active shooter, they are shooting. They're not waiting for you to get your buddies together and huddle up and get your gear on and figure out a tactic. You know, something like that happens, you respond, you hear shots, you go to the shot, and you neutralize the problem. You've got to do that. So, and getting back though to some of the priorities that I've said before, I think they're losing focus on some of the things they need to be doing, and they're out branching off doing some other stuff. I mean, there may be a time and place where you can do that, but we need to make sure we're covering our bases that we need to do and that we're covered by statute that we're supposed to be doing. And once that's covered and you're doing that good, then we can see about doing some specialized stuff and go from there. I've mentioned before about being proactive, you know, like patrols, for instance. Goodness knows we have a drug problem. It's everywhere. When you're not aggressive in patrols and you're not stopping vehicles for other infractions, when you stop a vehicle, you may find a stolen vehicle, you may find wanted people, you may find drugs, you may find guns. You never know. But there may be a mule, as they call, carrying the drugs in here from the bigger cities and places. But if you're not actively patrolling and stopping vehicles for different violations, you're just giving them a free ticket to drive on in and do whatever they want. They can drive I-64 right through here, 219, 60. I mean, they don't drop in the drugs and stuff in from the sky. They bring them in the vehicle. So,
Does the sheriff have jurisdiction on the interstate?
yes, anywhere in Greenbrier County, the deputies have jurisdiction. Unlike cities.
Is there a digital device that can sense drugs in a vehicle?
I'm not aware of that. You know, like I say, I've been out of that part of it for a number of years, but
There
Yeah.
are dogs.
a dog, yeah, a dog, you know,
I mean,
right.
That's,
something I could carry or you could carry or.
No, I'm not aware of any device like that unless it's something that the board had X-ray devices, X-ray vehicles.
well, they started that thing, but they're in a warehouse. Did
Well,
you not
true.
see that?
True,
Yeah.
but
They have
another,
machines that will do tractor trailers, pull them under, and it will actually illuminate a certain color if it's fentanyl in there, or if there's traces of fentanyl. But the government is not allowing them to put them in use right now, for some reason.
Which government, state or federal?
Federal.
Defeat the purpose, wouldn't it?
Well, they spent millions and maybe billions of dollars on this machinery that they're not using.
Did that?
but I was speaking too about the drug issue. We have a drug unit, violent task force drug unit, whatever, and they do, you know, I think a pretty good job, but they can't go out and buy the drugs themselves. They have to have informants. Because we can all volunteer to be informants, but they won't sell us a better aspirin if we try to buy it, because you've got to be part of that element to blend in and that they would trust. And so to develop informants, many times, they can start from something as simple as a traffic stop. Many times you'll arrest someone for something else and they'll want to try to help themselves out, so they coordinate with the prosecuting attorney, they can make some plea bargaining deals, and this person then turns around and becomes an informant for the task force. That's one way to develop informants to help battle the drug issue that we have. Because, you know, they have the same rights that all of us do. You can't just go kick your because you suspect something. You've got to have some probable cause, and, you know, they have the same rights and everything as we all do. So there are a lot of benefits to being a little more proactive. Many of the DUI arrests I would see through the years, probably 3/4 or more were a result of a traffic accident, where they go to investigate that, find that Bugbeard's been drinking and running through field sobriety and arrest him. They're not out actively, as it used to be, finding someone that's weaving or having some erratic behavior, pulling them over and arresting them before an accident. It's reactive, not proactive. And I think that being more proactive in the whole gamut of law enforcement is much better than being reactive, sitting back and waiting until something happens, and then you go up and investigate it and make an arrest. So there's a lot of benefits to being more proactive in doing your duties. So those are just a few things that I talked to the reporter about. I won't bore you anymore right now, but anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
Would you do, like shooter training in schools or hospitals and places like that?
Yes, I think that the officers need to be trained, and I think they've been doing it from time. Years ago, I sat in on one of the trainings right after I was elected magistrate, and they were down to middle school with Doug Goodale, who's an excellent firearm trainer, and he was putting them through scenarios and doing entries and so forth. And I think everybody, all officers need to have that training as a basic training, because again, if there's an active shooter, you gotta go. You don't have time to sit there and huddle up and do stuff. People are dying in there. So you've got to know how to approach, how to execute, and keep yourself as safe as possible, and others too, but still be able to aggressively go in and address it.
How about ensuring like the local communities officers are trained, things like that, or other emergency situations?
Well, I think as far as the city departments and so forth, obviously that's up to their chiefs and departments to train them, but I would encourage all departments to take part in that training, because those things can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be a school, it can be at this church.
Non-police officers?
Well, and maybe at the school, have teachers or things like, people like that involved in the training scenarios.
Now having the teachers involved, I'm not sure what the Board of Education, what their protocol is. I'm sure they have something in place. Some of those things are things that I'm not aware of yet until I take office. Then I can make an assessment and work. Because that's the big thing about being the sheriff. You're a liaison, not just with the county commission, but with the other law enforcement agencies, or at least I want to be, with the city governments. You know, I don't want to be one to sit behind the desk every day. I would like once or twice a month at least to go out and meet with the chiefs of police and other cities, and the mayors and so forth, and see, is there something we can do to help? What's going on? You know, how can we help each other? Because law enforcement is a big team effort. It takes many. Yes, sir.
If you have a concealed weapon permit, you've got a concealed weapon on your body, and somebody over here starts shooting people over there, a semi-automatic weapon, do you have a legal right to pull that weapon
Yes.
and shoot the guy that's causing?
If you think that person is in immediate, imminent danger of serious bodily harm, being killed, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I appreciate the point, I mean, when you said that.
We're gonna save your life. If I was shooting you, I'm not shooting you. But yeah, yes, absolutely.
That threat of life not only applies to an individual, it also applies to those close to you. And case law will show you throughout the country that a person that is not using a force far in excess of what is being used against them. So if somebody already has a weapon out, you're completely within your right to defend yourself and or that other person who appears that they may be in danger.
But that doesn't mean
There's
you
not
have
a-
to be tried.
Not hardly a court in the country that could ignore the case law and all that.
Absolutely.
On a more mundane question, I understand you're having some problems with people tearing down your signs and maybe some other signs around.
Yeah,
Isn't that considered a crime?
it is. Just
But
like I
let's
said,
turn a cheek, he says.
Do what?
He says, let's turn a cheek.
this is my 7th election. I was magistrate, the second one, and this is probably the worst. Yeah, I've had some of my big signs, the big 4x8s. 2 of them were just flattened down to the ground. You know, if the wind's blowing them, they'll bend them over a little bit. They're not gonna be flat on the ground like you took a steamroller and went over it. It destroyed the post, but it didn't hurt the sign, thank goodness. So I just got a new post, braced it, and put them back up. Had one taken up here at, near Walmart. You see some signs there on the side. And I'd put signs there in previous elections. The sign that was taken down had been there for a number of days. And I was told it was missing. So I come down, flag down a patrolman. He gets on the radio, someone speaks up on the other end. I think it's one of the deputies that deals on private property, and they took it down. Well,
They took it down.
and
Whoa.
come to find out, the person that took it down knows where I live, has my phone number, but was not man enough to call me or text me, or have his parents call or text, or have the police call him or something. They just took the sign down, threw the stakes over on Walmart's property, because I went over in the weeds and found them. One was broken off, so, but I got the sign back. The sign wasn't hurt. So, if it had just called, I'd have taken. I had no idea that was private property. I thought Walmart had all that down there because they bought that land where the old house was and the sinkhole and all that. And I thought, but they're a narrow strip, probably 20 feet or so between the sidewalk and Walmart's property that goes down to a point to their old driveway that Mrs. McCormick still owned. Had no clue.
Huh.
I don't know.
How many,
Thanks
how
for
many,
letting us know how it's going, and
Sure.
your presentation is improving a lot.
Thank you. At least I'll try to speak a little loud. Yes, ma'am.
how many officers are there in the sheriff's department? I have no idea.
I believe there are 30 positions. Now, how many they currently have, they may have a few openings, but I believe there are 30 slots.
And that's
The
for the
sheriff,
whole county,
yes, ma'am. Which is more than double when I was hired.
is it?
Yeah, I was unit 13 or 14 when I was hired, and that's all they had.
It's a big county.
It is, second largest in the state.
A lot of drugs in the western end.
Lot of work. to be done.
It's not just the western.
Lot of work.
Any other questions or thoughts for Doug?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, this is another group that we would like to have a few minutes with, so we'll start with Mr. Steve Snyder, who's running for our delegate.
All right, this is your opportunity to put me on the clock. Tell me when.
You go until the hook comes out. Go until the hook comes out, Steve.
You know what I'm saying? I'm Steve Snyder. I think most of you know me. I am new to the political realm, always resisted this, but you know what? I think it's time. My generation needs to stand up and deal with some of the issues we've been talking about since my parents left here in '61. We're still losing people. Look at all of us in here, except for Miss Allie, who's still 26. We're a little gray around the edges. You know, we do need more people in the state. We do need them at an age where they're out there making a living, paying taxes, purchasing things, raising children. We're graying out. I've been saying that for a long time. Our state is graying out. If you look at the demographics and the census, you know, year after year, decade after decade, we are getting older as a population. We need to fix that. It starts with economic development. It starts with making ourselves attractive, not only from schools, quality of life. We got that nailed down. You know, if you can't find a good quality of life in West Virginia, you're really just not looking hard enough.
What are you going for?
Come again?
What are you?
What office you running?
Oh, House of Delegates, District 47. That's all of us west of 219 in Greenbrier County. It takes in all of Alderson city limits, even if you're on the Monroe side. But it does not take in, there's a line from Charmco all the way to 219 in the Pocahontas County line, so Quinwood is in the same district with the folks up at Summersville. So really, we just kind of say 219 west. There's 3 of us, myself, Boogie's gonna talk here in a minute. We've got Ray Canterbury in the 47th and a couple Democratic challengers once we get to a general election. Either way, Doug talked about law enforcement a little bit. We do have an opioid problem, okay? We do. But the governor's drug task force, we do need to look at the drug task force. There's a lot of information out there, but we need to make sure it gets all the way down to the small municipalities, that everybody's got access to the information, because there are drugs. I used to sit on a round table in Beckley every month. We'd go up and we'd talk about how drugs are moving through the state, and we'd have folks from DOJ and FBI and local 911 centers, and we'd know kind of what was going on throughout the state. You know, things as silly as fake $20 bills. You know, we would actually pick up a lot of information. We need to make sure the information gets down to everybody, but the challenges that our small communities and municipalities, if you're looking at Rupert and Raynell and some of these others, it's money, money, and money, and money. It's very hard to attract young officers, pay to put them through the academy, be able to keep them in your small town of Alderson, when you just can't compete with pay. It's the same problem that we have with teachers. So as a state, I think there is a way for us to use some of that federal money through the some of the opioid settlements and others to potentially get that down. There's no short conversations and no short answers on all of that. It's gonna take a room full of experts, and that means we bring in the law enforcement folks. It means we bring in the educators. It means we bring in the folks from the rehabilitation centers. We have to identify the problem. We need to identify how the problem is getting to us. We need to work with the law enforcement officers, but then we need to work with our judges and everybody in that side of the system, because they're being overburdened with the number of people coming through. We need to take a look at what we have right now for a felony charge. Anything less than 15 or anything under 15 grams is not a felony charge. But anybody in this room could go pick up 28 packets a day at 14 grams and take them out and go back to the fishbowl and get another one and take it out. And you kind of see how this works. You know, I'm not saying it's the right answer, but it's a thought process. And some of the law enforcement officers I've spoken to said, let's bring that felony charge down to a lower threshold. Let's make people know that we're serious. You're going to jail in West Virginia. But at the same time, there's always that, the other side of the coin that says, okay, you've been charged with something. Maybe let's commute that sentence as long as you enter a program, you stay in the program, you complete the program, and within a reasonable amount of time, 3 years or 5 years, there's no further charge. Maybe that charge is completely expunged. There are many, many ways to look at this, but, you know, drug rehab is real, and it is not easy. I mean, I have a first cousin that was prescribed by a real physician in a real setting due to a back injury, and got prescribed real opiates, and after 3 days, your brain changes. That's reality. And, you know, he ended up with a real problem and lost his real job. But he's now got that fixed. It took him about 8 years to get squared away, and he's an educator, and now he's in South Carolina. But it takes a long time, and it's hard. So we need to look at that reentry and retraining into society. For God's sakes, it seems like we're giving everybody in the world a free education. Let's take a look at this from the reentry into society. If you look at Tammy and the Fruits of Labor up in Raynell and what they're doing, there are a lot of programs like that. We need to work with them. We need to bring in the federal money where we can to augment state money, to augment local money. Because guess what? If we don't, this is the, you know, take care of your pennies now and the dollars will take care of themselves, because it takes a whole lot of money on the back end to fix the problem after the fact. I am running on the term limits pledge. I've already signed mine. I've had it laminated and notarized. I am a term limits kind of guy. In 2021, Senator Nelson introduced term limits. The House passed it bipartisan. Even Stephen Baldwin voted for term limits. 32-2, the Senate passed bipartisan. It went to the House, but it was after the regular session. The extra session that year did not take it up. I don't see any reason why West Virginia cannot take up term limits for our delegates. It is our job to go up there, put a time limit on ourselves, get the work done. Don't be ashamed about trying to push the right agenda, the agenda that supports people, not special interest, and get this done. I am prepared on day one to go to the House and say, here it is, and I'm prepared to introduce it. And Senator Nelson, I do have a phone call out. I haven't heard anything back yet, but I think somebody on the Senate side would probably reintroduce that if we saw that kind of bipartisan support before. When we have folks that have been there too long, and I'm not saying this to poke anybody in the eye, because there are a lot of good people, and a lot of good people have been there for more than just a couple of years. But when the power gets centralized in any government or any organization, bad things begin to happen. Political action committees, special interest monies, and lobbyists, even good people get boiled in the crab pot after a while. If we decentralize this, where not anybody has the ability to control so much power, the vote then comes back and it belongs to you and I. So go up, do the job, and then come back and support the next person in line behind you and help them with the job. If they want the information, sure, give them all the information and the help. If they want no help and they want to go it alone, that's their own personal choice. If I win this, I guarantee you, I will be talking to this man in the back of the room, asking him his advice on some of the things that he saw and how the process works. Everybody in this room has something to give. So there we go, and I'm going to be quiet now. How's that for Steve Snyder in and out? Doesn't happen very often.
Questions for Steve before we let them on? Right, anybody?
What is your definition of term limits for a delegate?
If you look nationwide, there are now, I believe, 14 states that have instituted term limits. 8 to 12 years. 8 seems to be the biggest consensus, but 8 to 12 seems to be that realm. So for West Virginia, that would mean our senators could do 3, and our House of Delegates could do 6 if it's 12 years, set at 12 years.
Wouldn't it be more efficient to put delegates in 4 years? I mean, having to run for office every 2 years is inefficient and wasteful.
Look, he's done it a few times. I think, holy cow, it's like, that's kind of like a breather in between two rounds in a really big fight. It looks to me like it would be really hard. And I think that more than 2 years, but no matter how we do this, these are constitutional changes. It's going to take us as the voters or 2/3 of the legislature and to make this happen. I think it can. I think it should. For me, and to answer your question directly, I've said 2 terms, 4 years. And for my family and for me, I think that's it. So I've got a little stone in my pocket. My job is to go out there and throw my stone in the pool and get the ripples moving. And hopefully, everybody, this is every citizen. I think everybody needs to have your little stone to throw in the pond. And we can't fix everything, but we can start with our little group of ripples and work our way out. That's what I hope to do by keeping things moving and fluid. And the more people that are engaged in your own government, the more we know what's going on, do we not? If you've never used a legislative tracker, in fact, if you want to see an example of the term limits, there's a Facebook page on here, and I actually put a couple links. If you've never used the legislative tracker, so you can see who originated the bill, who sponsored it, who co-sponsored it, how it moved through, what floor amendments were made, who voted for it, who didn't vote for it, go to this Facebook page and click a link, and then after just a couple minutes, you'll really be able to see what's going on and what's being passed and who voted for it.
That's a good thing.
Information is power, as they say, right?
Any other questions?
Take your power back.
Steve? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stuart. Boogie Ambler to the floor. Also running for the House of Delegates.
Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight, and yes, I am running again. I've been out for 6 years. I left the House of Delegates on my own free will. I should know that. 2018, when I left the House of Delegates, I ran for your Senate seat.
Your name is
George Boogie Ambler.
Boogie, right?
Yes. And I was unsuccessful in that. And so I took a few years off, and I look back at the perception of what's going on in the state and et cetera. And there are a number of issues that need to be addressed. And when we went to 100 House seats, 100 districts, it certainly made a great change. And because having been in the 42nd, when we were 3 counties, Now we're down to the one, and it is the 47th, and it is from Alderson out to Rainelle, as Stephen said there. We are dealing with some issues of faith, family, and freedom. You'll never hear a politician tell you anything else about that. Every one of us stand for the same thing because that's what you stand for. That's what you stand for. So we're going to tell you that we're going to make things safe. We're going to increase the faith of people in the system itself and in our Lord, okay? And we're going to talk about the freedoms because that's what makes us. That's what made America. But the intricacy part of dealing with politics is how do you get the job done when you have to convey your thought process to another 50 in the House of Delegates, and then find at least 18 on the Senate side when you work off the other side. And there's where the separation generally takes place. How do you get in the door? Everybody can stick a foot in the door. That don't mean you get to go inside. You have to work the system in order to get inside to make a change. And I will say this to you. Term limits, you make term limits. I make term limits. I vote for the people I want to vote, and if I don't want them in there, I don't vote for them. So I don't need to have 4 or 6 years and tell you that that's all I intend. At my age, I may not have 6 years left, so I may be term limited anyway. Okay, but the point being is, and I say that because I'm planning on being around about 20 years, but probably not all politics. Okay, but the idea is that we've got problems. Yes, we do. Watch and be careful when we talk about how much money West Virginia has. Be careful about listening to what you read in the paper, because I'll give you a little example. I will tell you that we're going to bring in $6.5 billion next year into the state coffers. Okay? Now, if we do 6.5, but we did 9, I knew 6.5 is all we were going to be, getting in. I'm telling you that, my gosh, look at all the policies we have done that we made another $2.5 billion off of it. That's kind of paper money, folks. You have to be careful about that. And some people are very good about overestimating or underestimating. And I tell you, we get a lot of underestimation from state government. And remember, the governor makes the budget. The legislature does not make the budget. We debate the budget on how to get some money into that and make appropriations. You can underestimate, and then when you oversee that, you really look good. So be mindful when you talk about, here Candace talked about money and things, how it goes about and how good things are. We may not be quite as good. We're not as good in the 47th district. Think about it. When you go out here on Route 60, out about rich lands and things, you start seeing a total change out there to the economics of the western side of the county. There is a way of improving it. There certainly is. Talking to the mayors, maybe a little presumptuous here in the last few weeks, but stop and think about this. How are we going to? Alderson cannot bring itself up by itself. It's going to have to join with Rupert, Rainelle, and become a little bit of a conglomerate. Because the assets that they have are not enough to bolster them to the size of Lewisburg right here. So they're going to have to tie themselves together a little bit in order to make it. And how do you do it? Gosh, we got the Historical Society right now working on what? A history of the area. We got the Blue. We got the Greenbrier River. We got the rail trail out there. All of those are economic factors. And where is West Virginia's economic factor at? Tourism, isn't it? Isn't that really is what's driving our state? Is the tourist dollar. So if they come together and work with the help of a delegate in Charleston who can work in the system, has worked in the system, and has been known to get things done within the system, then I think our future is brighter on the western side. I think it's very bright out there. You know, when I went to Charleston in 2013, after being elected in 12, I went down there and I had the West Virginia Department of Natural Resources police officers come to me, a local officer right here in this county still. And he said, Boogie, he said, we got a problem. And he said, what's the chances of you introducing the bill? And I said, and I won't call his name because I don't want to put him on the spot or what, but he said, we have EMS and first responders taking pictures of people who are dead and putting them on internet. You may remember that in 2013, 14, because it was an issue. Okay, when I went down there, green as grass. I put in a bill and my name was the only name on it, okay? Ambler was the only name on the bill. It was a Democrat-controlled 54-46 majority for them. Fought for that bill that year. The second year, the Democrats come and said, hey, maybe we can get this bill through if you let one of our guys introduce your bill. The guy was a delegate from Summers, up here in Nicholas County. I said, hey, this bill needs to be done. These guys are telling me, and people, I've talked to this family that this has happened to and stuff. Yeah, do it. They couldn't get it through. I was going to be the second on it, okay? They were going to let another first year in our second term. Well, it went nowhere. But we took over in 2014. And I reintroduced the bill again. And then I had about 12 names on that who wanted to get on. And John Schott, who was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee over from Mercer County, John went to work on that. And you know who we fought over that bill? The newspapers. We fought the movie industry. Can you imagine the movie industry? Because they said it was an intrusion into the First Amendment. We worked on that bill. I worked on that bill with John and then for the next 2 years. And guess what? That bill became known as Jonathan's Law. That's what you got to have when you go to Charleston. You can't be there 1 or 2, 3, 4 years and get it done. You got to be in there and you got to fight for it. And the way you fight for it is that you get in there and you get to be known by the people that you're around. You get to be known by you, the constituent who put you down there, that gives you encouragement to keep fighting on for bills like that. There are a number of those issues, and the fact is, folks, don't be swayed at all that you can go down in the first year you're down. You're not going to be anything. You're just going to be a number down there, and you'll get on a committee and whatever they are, and until they find out who you are, leadership. And if you tell them you're only going to be there another 2, and Steve, I'm not throwing at you on this.
It sounds like it.
I can tell you that there were some delegates in 2013 that signed a thing with Norm Windquist. Wasn't that who it was?
I'm sorry.
A guy by the name of Norm, because they took advice from an old hand, you know, and then they got off with it. They said, hey, you're full of crap, and we're not part of that. But you take, and if you go, then you get moved up into the system. You get to move up, and then you can introduce a bill. You have a little more clout to that bill. And as a result of that, you are more effective in what you're doing down there. That is common sense, folks. That's common sense, and I want to emphasize the word common sense. When I went down there in 2013, 2014, got elected in 2014 again, and come right up here to the center up here with the Greenbrier Economic, right up here at Max Welton. And Senator Joe Manchin was there. We were up there for an opening, a dedication up there. And when it was over, Joe and I don't mind calling him Joe. I can tell you a little funny thing on him sometime about it. But anyway, Joe and I were there, and we went out on the porch, and the media was there, and my people were standing. And he said, Boogie, he said, what do you think now after you've got a term, down there? I said, well, Senator, the way I look at it, when you get out of your car down there, they want you to leave your common sense in your car. That's what he told, I said, that's what they want. You know what Joe Manchin told me? The only thing that I ever took him to heart on, to be truthful with you, is the fact, don't leave your common sense in the car, take it with you. And if you don't take common sense in that legislature, you're not going to be successful at what you're doing. Compromise is common sense. And that's what we're dealing with. What? Super majorities now. The prospect to be as much as 95 Republicans down there. And they will range in age from 22 years old to 80. 22 to 80. I don't know very many 22s. And I've got a few myself that I've gotten through those stages who know anything about how to write a law for West Virginia and how business ought to be operated. They don't have the experience, and there is something to experience. Folks, what I'm trying to tell you is there is something to having experience in order to be successful in getting things accomplished in Charleston, West Virginia. I am running for the office. I'm tickled to death but to come back. It is open office. We have good candidates and things, and it'll be up to you. Who you all decide who's going to be the one who can best serve your interest in the 47th. All three are good men. I noticed I put myself in there because I won't get any other praise anyway. But the idea is just simply this, that, hey, it's a tough job down there. If you want somebody who'll go down and fight, and we also will be a voice for you. But there's a lot of difference between somebody who talks the talk and somebody who actually walks the walk, okay? So if you would, I'd appreciate it. Keep me in mind on the 14th of May. I'd appreciate that. Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Any questions for Ray Boogie? Any questions going on? All right.
Covering everything on everybody's mind, right?
Yeah, one more delegate candidate here. I want to introduce Thomas Perkins, who is running for the House of Delegates. Welcome, Thomas. Up for
Thanks, Gordon, for saving the worst speaker for last.
I'll listen to you.
All right, so I'm Thomas Perkins. I'm running for District 46 House of Delegates, which is your eastern Greenbrier and southern Pocahontas counties. And I'm mostly running for juvenile justice reform, but I want to touch on some of the questions and stuff that kind of come up here this evening. And one was from Barbara about term limits and House of Delegates being like 2 years. I'm running against Jeff Campbell, which previously held Mike Honaker's seat. Now, Mike Honaker served half of his term. He stepped down, right? So if we had a 4-year term on House of Delegates, that means Jeff Campbell will be essentially in there for the next 3 years. So when you start thinking about it, it's like, should we really have 4 years or should we have 2 years? I like the 4-year model because there's too much politics, right? We're constantly always bickering back and forth, and we need longer. We need term limits for one. So, 2 terms of 4 years in the House of Delegates is in my mind. But at the same time, when you start thinking about what happens if somebody steps down and you have an appointment, you end up with a representative that you don't want there, right? So that's a problem. Now, the next subject I want to talk on is pretty much was a big, kind of a dominating discussion this evening, which is drugs, right? I support drug legalization. Because one of the problems that we have here in West Virginia is the opioid epidemic. And I know the legislator does not want to come in and do like full drug legalization, okay? But in my mind, if we can decriminalize it, the people who, let's say, are addicted to drugs, or let's say you have family members or loved ones who's addicted to drugs, the problem is people are afraid to reach out, and get them help because they're afraid what's going to happen, If your loved one's addicted to drugs, what's going to happen to them? They're going to probably end up getting arrested. They're going to end up going to jail, lose custody of their kids, lose their house, lose everything, right? So that's the problem with having drugs being illegal. So if we could decriminalize it to a certain point, then you're going to be able to get people in the rehab. You're not going to be prosecuting people for trying to reach out and get them help. But in my mind, what I would like to see happen is we decriminalize the drugs, but we make it so that it's still illegal to actually sell drugs. And what that means is if somebody wants to be, let's say, like, go out here and try to buy drugs, that's legal. But if you try to sell them, that's illegal. And that means that we're going to go right after the drug dealers because they're going to be afraid to essentially try to sell drugs. And that's what we need. We need an approach where we're going after these dealers, not the individuals. So that's one of the things that's been going on for a long time, but we really have to kind of crack down on that. The other big thing that bothers me a lot here, and I think this probably, everybody sees this, right? It's we see the youth and everybody leave West Virginia. We also see businesses leaving. And we're seeing jobs leaving, but we have companies, for example, like Form Energy, that's from out of state, that comes in here and sponsors legislation. And what does the legislator do? We give them $300 million to come here to start business in West Virginia. Then what? Well, it's kind of like going back to Cylindro, which was Obama. Remember Obama's solar panel manufacturer? What happened to it? It went belly up. It's like we're going to manufacture all these solar panels, distribute them, and then what happens? The company goes under. Taxpayers are on the hook. We lose all this money. So what we need to do is we need to be focusing more on keeping small businesses here in West Virginia instead of trying to give money to out-of-state corporations to come here and conduct business in West Virginia. Why don't we try to incentivize the businesses that we already have to keep them here in the state so that they're not going under? Because right now the problem is most of our businesses are essentially on life support. We just had, what was it, Allegheny Wood Products that just recently went bankrupt. Well, they've been on life support for years. They can't modernize. They can't upgrade their equipment. They can't buy new trucks. They can't buy new wood chippers or whatever they need to do business. They're just, they're on this like system of life support where they're just trying to, pay their employees, keep operations running and keep everybody employed, but they can't modernize. And that's the problem. We're not getting businesses upgraded or modernizing, so we're moving forward. And businesses that's been here for years are they're going bankrupt. So that's something I think the legislature needs to try to work on more, is helping the businesses that we have and stop worrying about out-of-state businesses, trying to bring them to the Mountain State. Because let's face it, if we bring an out-of-state business here and we can't keep the businesses we have, what's going to happen to the out-of-state businesses? They're going to leave like the other small businesses. So, but with that being said, anybody have any questions? Anything?
I have one.
So,
What makes you stand out from all the other candidates?
I'm probably a little bit more libertarian, I would say, than some of the other candidates, which is in a way a good thing and a bad thing. But as far as Jeff Campbell goes, he ran as a Democrat. He was elected as a Democrat. He served in the House of Delegates as a Democrat. And after his term, he switched Republican. So, you have a career Democrat that's now in a Republican seat, appointed by Jim Justice. And I don't think that's right. I think that's one of the problems that we have. The other guy that I'm running against, he's a young guy. He's a nice guy, but he's 20 years old. He really doesn't have a whole lot of political experience. And I think that's a problem. And I don't really want to turn this into kind of like a bash for him, I find that sad. So that's kind of one of the reasons I kind of stepped in to actually run, because I felt that voters didn't really have any good options. And
Any other questions for Thomas? In the back, Steve?
Thomas, legalization. Have you been to Eugene, Oregon, or Portland, Oregon, or the cities in Northern California? Because I tell you, I have. And to get into a coffee shop where you have to step over the people stoned out of their mind and sleeping on the sidewalk, try and take the family for a walk down the road and they're smoking dope openly at the outside cafe, I have to tell you, that's what legalization did for them. And there were literally people on airplanes flying to Eugene and Portland because the social welfare system actually helps take care of them so they can be homeless and do what they want to do. It was not working. So if you've got some data to put behind it, or I'd like to hear it, because what I saw wasn't working.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's a huge issue. We need to stop thinking about California and kind of look at what's happening closer to home, because we're starting to see this evolve. Like right now, Philly up in Pennsylvania. It is god awful up there. And we're starting to see the drug issue come into places like Morgantown, like the northern panhandle and all that of the state. I mean, that's really where the drugs are just destroying West Virginia right now. And then we're seeing it in Huntington as well. So they're going after the youth and all that. But I mean, it comes down to the question of what's the best solution? Do we just, think about it. We've been fighting the war on drugs for what, 50 years? I mean, what we're doing is not working. And I know, like what you're talking about, they're dealing with in California is like the need to exchange programs and all of that. But, in my mind, we have to try to get people, help, right? And people don't want to do help. But the thing is, like with all the cities out west, the same thing that you have with the drugs and stuff is like, think about the crime. Law enforcement doesn't enforce anything, right? I mean, someone passed out on the street, that has a serious drug addiction problem. I mean, realistically, it's like, okay, this person needs help. We need to put them in rehab. But the thing is, where do you say draw the line where it's like, are we going to just keep on down this continuous road of just addiction, or do we stop somewhere?
Question. Why don't we accuse a drug seller that sells the drug to a customer overdoses? Why is the drug dealer charged with murder?
They are.
They need to be.
They are being charged.
Yes, they are.
I have 2 cases right now at the law firm about this. So they are. Our prosecutor
Why
here,
haven't we known about this?
because you don't know about this stuff.
I know, why don't we know?
I don't know. If you look at your indictments, you would see it.
Well, I don't.
So, But yeah, Pat Bye has, I guess, taken a stand on this. And they are being charged.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but it kind of goes back to like what I said a minute ago. If you decriminalize it, but so like if you buy it, it's legal, but it's illegal to sell it. I mean, you're going
But
strictly.
then how are these guys?
That's an
going to
interstate
pay
commerce issue
the
now.
drugs? That is the question. How are they gonna buy them if it's illegal? And
Anybody doing that?
Thomas, you may want to look at Colorado, which has changed. They've decided that decriminalizing it was a bad idea, and they just now passed a law criminalizing the drug sale.
are we talking about Schedule 2, Schedule 3, or are we just talking about like basic marijuana? What kind of drugs are we talking about? Heroin, fentanyl?
It needs to be, like, my viewpoint is this. If you go and buy over-the-counter aspirin, and you're getting it in a bottle, and it's not labeled milligram or dosage, right? Are you taking 10 milligrams? Are you taking 500? Or are you taking 5,000? So if drugs are like regulated, and you actually have the dosage, you're not going to have the type of overdose deaths. Like, for example, cocaine, and someone who's addicted to it, the goal needs to be to get them off of a drug like that, right? So what if you could go to a doctor and,
You get cocaine.
and actually have it prescribed, but gradually reduce it so that way they can actually get off of that type of drug?
They have that. Suboxone, Subutex.
Actually, the VA has a very active program in that. People have to sign a contract to do it, and they do that. But I remember while we were in Clarksburg, they had one guy come in and got his, took him off one time, wrecked his car and killed a nurse on the way home. So they've all got problems, and it's a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah, and that's what we've been battling for the last decade here in West Virginia, is just drugs as a whole, so.
What other questions can we introduce to Thomas? Good. All right, thanks, Thomas. All right, in the 7 minutes we have left, we have one more topic. And Allie brought it up earlier, and I wanted to reintroduce it for you all, and that is, we are going to the fair this year, folks. We're excited about that again. I am more excited that our chairman of the fair, Brent Thompson, has stepped up again to 2024 and will be our chair. So. Brent, any words of wisdom or guidance or things to think about?
We are going to need help.
Stand up.
Aside from lack of balance, looking to who will commit to run a shift for the fair. I think we had 2-hour shift, 3 hours,
Probably more than that.
depending upon how many come forward.
No, we went to 4 instead of 8.
And that, it's a long time. to be sitting there. But I think the most effective people, like Frank and Barbara, Doug and Sue, you engage with people. And I thought, once I saw that, how effective they were in receiving money into the fund, is I found it to be great fun to get out behind the desk and engage people who are going through. And I found that they were very interested in talking to us. And we're going to have another main non-speaking character at the booth, which is the Trumpster. A lot of people came by.
You still have it?
Interested.
Good.
No, I don't have it.
Well,
I still have
you
it.
have it? I think, Doug, we have.
All right, we'll find you, we'll
If not,
find
we
you.
can find it.
Yeah, we can replace them,
Yeah.
we can add it up.
But there are a lot of
Gotta have
people
freebies too.
interested.
Well, the club buys candy. We'll buy the candy, but like the Trump Bucks, we lost our song this year.
But we have a lot left.
We're looking forward to having everybody here do at least one shift and maybe two.
Yeah.
And I think we'll be effective again this year in being able to run the booth. And Doug was instrumental in getting it physically set up. So I began learning those ropes and hope to learn more this time around. It's a long shift when you get to the end of the day and you're going out to your car in the dark and trying to find your car.
There's a pill for that.
We're talking about a great opportunity.
Or find someone else's car.
What date's fair this thing?
Get your keys there, revise.
15th to 24th. 15th to 24th.
Through the 24th.
August.
What's this?
It starts August the 8th.
Oh, is it? I'm a week off then, I'm sorry. Whoops, sorry about, take that back.
What are the dates again?
The
What are the
8th
dates?
through the
August
17th.
I still have,
August 8th through
17th.
17, early.
8.
8 to 17.
Okay.
I'll volunteer for 4 hours, 9 p.m.
Will you wear the
We'll have a
crown this
sign-up
year?
sheet
I'll have a sign-up sheet available for the
Just
next.
put my name down there for me.
Brett,
Will
will you wear the crown all week this year?
Brian on
Will you wear it all week?
Oh,
I have new ones, so we can get you new ones.
that would be pretty exciting.
I can
Uh-huh.
go with you.
So, that said, now that we have the dates correct, 8th to the 17th of August, be thinking about your calendars like Frank is right now. Think about the days you might be available. It was a good experience last year. I think we stepped up the booth a little bit last year and had some, if you have ideas on how to improve the booth, love to have Brents hear those so we can
Are we on
incorporate
2 per
them.
shift? 2 per shift?
Yeah.
2 people per shift?
Same back channel. Okay, so that's the fair commercial. All right, dates to remember. I have in front of me a card for the Raleigh County Republican Executive Committee, who is meeting on April 16th from 6:30 to 8 at the Black Knight Country Club. They will have candidates there and other GOP and conservative events going on. So if that's here today, you can have the link and be part of that. We are going to meet again on May 2nd. I would remind everybody the primary is May 14th. I would also remind everybody that all candidates you heard tonight are club members, except them. So, although the club does not endorse candidates prior to the primary, I would just reflect that if you're a club member, it's somebody to consider for your vote as you go into that. As we mentioned, the fair is the 8th to the 17th, and we'd like everybody to think about putting some time on their calendar that you come out and support us at the state fair again this year. Do you have anything else to talk about?
What about the brochure?
Well, what about the brochure?
I want to, Thomas created this brochure and Barb and I have still up. So stand up. This way.
Speak up.
Thomas Perkins created this
You did.
brochure. And Barbara and I looked at it. Anyway, we've
gave our input into it, but I think he's done a great job.
It's nice.
He did it voluntarily.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's something to look at, give your input on it, and I think that we should be able to, just my thoughts, this time, to get it ready and have it printed to pass out at the events, especially the state fair, or any other event, or wherever we may be able to.
Yep.
Pass it out, so.
Yeah, I do.
Open
What
for
do we
discussion.
do? Fill it out.
I'm sorry?
We got a question. On this last paragraph down, it says, as a member, you will receive special discounts, promotions, and insider information about local Republican establishments. Who's gonna provide that information?
Ben Anderson, sir.
You go on to the webpage.
All right, we're gonna be that time. Get a copy of the brochure, give Thomas your feedback, hey, that's those kind of things. I have been remiss, I have not had a chance to really do much with it. We would like to get this out for the summer events. We get into the Alderson Parade, we get into the fair, we get into a lot of other routine events. In fact, there may be an opportunity to get this over to the visitor center, because they're always looking for literature over there. And, we think that we hopefully will have this a wide audience to receive that.
I'd like to put forward that I think the next time the Greenbrier Quarterly comes out, that we consider an ad in there. They
I
reach
agree.
newcomers. The same with the Greenbrier Visitors Guide, which of course that'll be another year because that just came out. But we've got to reach the newcomers that come
Yes.
here.
We do, there's also a welcome wagon or welcome
Is there
basket
Greenbrier
group.
Readers?
Yeah,
Is that still?
that's them, yeah. And they have a whole pile of this kind of stuff they give out to people. I'm not going to get that in there.
Yeah.
Russell has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, Dan,
Go ahead.
where do I get fill those out? Do I mail it to somebody or what do I do?
Yeah, at this point, what you do is, if you're a new member, you can fill this out, clip this off, and our post office box is on it,
Okay, I'll do that.
and we can send it back. Yeah, if you're in the meeting, you can certainly pay your. All right, any other questions, Steve?
Just a quick comment.
Did you buy a book?
Next Thursday, 6:30, there is a Meet the Candidates that's being hosted by West Virginia Real.
Do me a favor, stand up and kind of make the announcement so everyone can hear you.
Next Thursday, 6:30 PM, West Virginia, or Real West Virginia, Meet the Candidates Forum for those of us in the delegate side. For the nonpartisans, it's next Monday at 6:30 at the
Greenbrier Valley Theater, right?
Greenbrier Valley Theater.
I think that's what it says.
And
So it's just at the Lewis Theater. I'm sorry, yeah, not Greenbrier.
And then, April 15th, the, ladies in Rupert, the Rupert Women's Club, have been kind enough to invite us all to a Meet the Candidates, so if you know anybody in that area. And if you would like an update on voter registry, I just happened to be in the courthouse the other day, 6,674 Democrats. But 9,540 Republicans as of last Friday. And
Independence.
your unaffiliated voters, which is very interesting number here that we really need to be aware of. Unaffiliated voters are now 5,329. Ladies and gentlemen,
That's
there
a
is a
great
big
number
shift
to
in the
share.
unaffiliated voter in West Virginia.
That's the swing vote we need.
Your independents are a very small group. Only 801 took the independent route versus the nonpartisan route. So something to be aware of.
Population of the throne. Thank you.
If I've
Thank you.
done it before, do I have to read?
No. If you're registered, no, you don't have to do a thing.
All right, any other business for the good of the club? One?
I had one.
Ah, yes, sir.
I had some conversations with people in the community where we're doing business in Walmart or another store like Kroger's. And you start up conversations with people, it doesn't have to be long, but you run into people who are interested in joining the club. And the lady I talked to is committed to be next month. We need other people. If we can each try to get one person to come next time, it will double the size of the congregation here. And that is extra help, extra hands, extra feet. You have something.
Yes, I always speak to people that are wearing either Trump t-shirts or conservative or their hats and that, you know, give them a thumbs up, and maybe I would carry that a little bit further and say, you know, there's a Republican club here.
This has been the start of several interesting conversations that I've had this last month.
I got an original one, can I wear that?
Yes. You
Certainly can.
advertise as a charter.
Boogie, you had a question?
No, I want to make a comment before we leave about a situation I think we may or may not be aware of, in dealing with state party.
Okay, feel free.
What I know.
Yep, go ahead.
As you know, the state party wanted to change and close the primary. And it is scheduled to close in the 26th election. We're unaffiliated, so only Republicans can vote in the Republican party. You have to be a member, okay? The figures that Stephen just gave you were, we had 800 independent and 5,300 unaffiliated. That's 6,000 votes.
Yep.
Okay, those people, to the best of my knowledge, in 2012 helped elect me. Then 2014, 2016. I must have lost them in 2018. But the point is, if you don't agree that ought to be changed and reopen that up like it is in 24, then you need to contact the state executive committee and let them know your dissatisfaction about it. And if you want to close it, then you're tickled to death. But if you think that we can afford to lose 6,000 votes by closing a primary, what's it going to do to us in the general election night?
Are you actually losing the votes, Boogie?
Well, I don't know that you will lose them because they're not going to vote they won't vote in our primary. They will not be able to vote in our primary. So that is a potential 6,000 voters that won't be there in November.
But historically, what has happened is people like that have voted for the weakest candidate.
I agree with you, Doug. You're right.
The Democrat can beat.
That's, we saw that with Evan Jenkins in last time Manchin won.
If the Presbyterian Church is looking for a minister, and don't go down the street to Baptist Church and ask them to help you select it. And that's what we're doing and I'm on the state executive committee, and I voted for that. In fact, I'd like to see it closed now, because we're not electing true conservatives. We're being
Watered down.
by a group of people who won't make a commitment to a party, and yet they want to have a voice. And you need to think about that if you're a Republican and a conservative. Is if you want somebody outside of your church helping you find your preacher, then that's your choice.
The fact of the matter is, there were 2 or 3 candidates that hope to gain election this year, and that's why they wanted to put off to 2026. And one of them was the chairman of the state party, who has not performed very credibly, in my opinion, in her 2 years there.
Running for an intermediate judge, is that where it's at now? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Court of the judge on the intermediate court of appeals?
Yes.
Yes, that's what it said. It was a self-centering thing in my estimation. It was self-centering.
Remember that the governor wanted it left that way too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think the number that we were given the other day, Boogie, by somebody in the public, I haven't fact-checked it, but 28% of West Virginians are now unaffiliated. So the Republican Party does need to find a way to bridge the gap between those who are Republicans or just maybe aggravated.
Part of the thinking is that is an incentive for those non-party people to join a party, that would encourage them to perhaps join the party. So there's lots of pros and cons, there's no doubt about it. But we do need to think about both sides.
Yeah, to get those people to join and make a commitment, understand that side of it, we truly do.
All right, I think we all heard the gospel. Now it's time to go out and spread it. Get some people to the Republican Party. And with that, I will close the meeting and wish you all a wonderful evening.
All right.